Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, at the very bottom of the page. Lamed Aleph of Maseches Megillah, at the very end of the page. The last words on the page, Amar Rav Huna said. Top of the next page, Rosh Chodesh Av Shechalios B'Shabbos. If the first of Av falls out on a Shabbos, Maftirin Chadshechem Ladechem Sana Nafshi. The Haftorah, now that it's Av and leading towards Tisha B'Av, and a time where we're mourning the Beis HaMikdash, the Haftorah is from Sefer Yeshaya, the first chapter, and it says that your Rosh Chodeshes and your holidays, I despised. Hayu alai l'torach, they were a burden to me. And the Medrash understands that this is a reference to the holidays, the fake holidays, the holidays that Yeravam set up for the people of Israel in the northern kingdom, and Hashem says that he despises them, and perhaps because this is kind of the beginning of the split, the beginning of the end for the Jewish people in terms of their being in with the Beis HaMikdash and in Eretz Yisrael, so we read that as we enter the month of Av. Now, the Gemara asks, "Mai hayu alai l'torach?" What does it mean that they were a burden to me? In what way were they a burden? So Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, "Lo dayim lahem l'Yisrael shechotim lefanai." It's not enough that they sin before me. Ela shematrichin osi leida ezo gezerah kasha avi aleim. But they trouble me, they burden me to see what harsh decree I have to bring upon them. Meaning that, as the Marsha explains, that the onshim, the punishments Hashem gives, are midah k'neged midah. They're measure for measure, so that we recognize where we went wrong, so that we can improve on it. But that, in a certain sense, so to speak, is a burden, because each it's calculated, it's careful, and it's one thing that you sin, but then I have to match the punishment to the sin. That is described as a torach in the pasuk, as a burden for Hashem. Okay, B'Tisha B'Av Gufei Mai Maftirin. What is the Haftorah on Tisha B'Av itself? So the Gemara first says, Amar Rav Eicha Haisa Lizona. So the Haftorah is from also from Yeshaya, and how did the city of the reliable city become like a prostitute? And they used to have justice, and now they're murderers. So it's about the fall of the spiritual state of Jerusalem, which brought about its physical destruction. So Mikramai, okay, but what's the laning? What is the Kriyas HaTorah? So Tanya, we have a Brisa, it says, Acher Momrim, others say, usually that's Rabbi Meir, V'im lo sishma'u li, that the Haftorah is from the curses of Parshas B'chukosai. V'im lo sishma'u li, if you don't listen to me, then you're going to get all these punishments, which are the curses that lead to the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Nassim Bar Yosef Omer, Rabbi Nassim Bar Yosef says, Ad ana yinatzuni amazeh. It's from Parashas Shlach, by the Meraglim, by the spies, which their bad report came on Tisha B'Av. So the Hashem says, until when is this nation going to anger me? The Yeshom or others say, from a different part of that Parsha, Ad masei laidahara hazos, until when will I endure this evil Ada, this evil congregation? Either way, from Parashas Shlach, regarding the Meraglim, which happened on the 9th of Av. Amar Abaye says, Ha'idna, nowadays, Nahogalma lemikri ki salid banim. The custom is to read from Parshas V'eschanan ki salid banim, which is a parsha that says when you have children and you're in the land for a long time, and you start to go off the path, and you start to worship Avodah Zarah, start to worship idols, then I'm going to obliterate you. So that, and kick you out of the land, and that is relevant for Tisha B'Av. Umaftirin, and the Haftorah is Asof Asifim, which is from the book of Yirmiyah, which means Hashem is going to utterly destroy you, and again appropriate for the day of Tisha B'Av. So even though the Gemara previously said that the Haftorah is Eicha Haisal Zona, but Abaye says the minhag, the custom, is now to read as the Haftorah Asof Asifim. Okay, now the Mishnah said that the Ma'amados Ma'aseh Bereshis, that the Ma'amados read from they read the story of the creation. They read Bereshis. The Ma'amados again are so each there were turns for the families of the Kohanim to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and back home there were designated cities that would daven along for the karbanos to be accepted, and they had whoever was assigned to their turn would have a special Kriyas HaTorah. So, and what would they read? They would read from Bereshis. Now, ask the Gemara Minagi, from where do we know this? But really, the Gemara's question is why? What's the idea of reading Bereshis for the Ma'amados? So, Rabbi Ami said that what we're saying by reading Bereshis is Ilmale Ma'amados lo niskaimu shemayim ba'aretz. If not for the Ma'amados, then the heavens and earth would not stand. And seemingly by Ma'amados here it means the turns, the karbanos, those who took turns serving in the Beis Hamikdash and bringing the karbanos, and those at home would read about Bereshis, because we're saying if not for the karbanos, the heavens and earth would not stand. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Im lo brisi yomam v'layla, if not for my covenant day and night, chuko shamayim v'aretz lo samti, the laws of the heavens and earth I will not have placed. In other words, if you don't, if my covenant isn't being kept, and the covenant here seems to refer to the karbanos, then the heavens and earth, the laws of the heavens and earth cease to exist, the existence would cease. And so that's appropriate that corresponding with the karbanos you read about Bereshis, about existence, about creation, because that's what's holding up creation. Now this leads us to a question, which is, so then what about when there's no karbanos? Then what holds up the world? So the Gemara goes on and it says that this was kind of the conversation between Abraham and Hashem. A bit of a different spin, but a different angle, but I think the conversation answers our question as well. Uksiv, and it says, Vayomer Hashem Elokim, Vayomer, and he said, or Vayomar actually, and Avram said, Hashem Elokim, Hashem my God, Bama Eda Ki Iroshena, Bama Eda Ki Iroshena. With what will I know that my descendants will inherit the land? You're promising me the land. How do I know they're going to inherit the land? So what was his question? Why did he think they wouldn't? So Amar Avram, Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avram said to Hashem, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe, Shema chas v'sholom Yisrael chotem lefanecha. Maybe, God forbid, the Jews will sin. V'ata osa lahem kedoram avol, kedor aflaga, and you'll do to them as you did to the generation of the flood. You'll destroy them, or like you did to the generation of the dispersion of the Tower of Babel, and you'll disperse them. So what confidence do I have that they're going to actually get the land of Israel and keep it? So Amar Lo, Lav, he said no. So I guess this is the initial conversation. First, Abraham said, maybe you're going to destroy them. Hashem said, no, I won't. Amar Lefanav, then Abraham said, Ribono shel olam, Bama Eda, how do I know? Amar Lo, so that's where Hashem then said, Kichali eglo mishuleshes, bring an egel, a calf that's Mishulesh. I think there's different understandings of what what Mishaleshes means, but the reference here, the point is that he's saying, Hashem is responding, the way the Gemara is reading this conversation, is Hashem is saying, bring an offering. That's how you'll know that your descendants will not be destroyed, because of offerings. So the conversation is, Avram says, how do I know that they're going to be able to, not going to be destroyed? The answer is, bring a carbon, meaning karbanos will help them survive. So Amar Lefanav, so then Avram said, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, Teinach Bizman Shebeis HaMikdash Kayim. So it makes sense when the Beis HaMikdash is standing. Bizman Shein Beis HaMikdash Kayim Mate Elam. But what about when there's no Beis HaMikdash, there's no temple, and they can't bring karbanos? What's going to give them life? What's going to give them standing? So Amar Lo, so Hashem said to him, Kvar Takanti Lohem Seder Karbanos. I already established for them the order of the karbanos, meaning they could read about the karbanos from the Torah, Kol Zman Shekorim Bohen, and whenever they read from them, Ma'alani Aleim Kilu Makrivim Lefanai Karban. I consider it as if they're bringing a carbon before me, Umochani Al Kol Avonoseim, and I forgive their sins. So the response to Avram is, they're going to survive even without karbanos, is they'll read karbanos, and they'll learn about the karbanos, and that will be considered as if they bring the karbanos, and their sins will be forgiven. So this conversation that Avram has with Hashem really also ties back to the beginning of the Gemara that said, the lead up to this was, if not for my covenant, which we say, if not for the karbanos, the heaven and earth wouldn't stand. Even though we don't have karbanos now, we see from this conversation that we could read the karbanos, and that will uphold the world. Okay. Then the Mishnah said that b'tainios brachos uklalos ve'mafsikim b'klalos. That on fast days, you read the brachos, the blessings and the curses from B'chukosai, from the first Tochacha, but you can't be mafsik, you can't interrupt when you're reading the klalos. One person should read the whole aliyah, you shouldn't break up the curses. So ask the Gemara, Minahan Yimili, from where do we know that? Or what's the reason, what's the source for the idea that you shouldn't interrupt in the middle of the curses? So Amar Reb Chia Bar Gamda, Amar Rabbi Asi. Reb Chia Bar Gamda said in the name of Rabbi Asi to Amar Kra, because the pasuk says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, it says, Musar Hashem b'ni al timas. The musar, the education or the rebuke of Hashem, al timas. Don't despise it. Don't be disgusted by it. Which means, Rashi says, that the musar, the rebuke of the Tochacha, don't make it seem like you can't read it by stopping in the middle, like you can't handle this. You have to read it. That's one understanding. Others understand Rashi brings that it's really coming from the end of the pasuk, because the end of the pasuk says, "Ve'al takots b'toch chachto." Don't again, takots could mean be disgusted by the rebuke, but it could also mean don't stop, don't break in the tochacha. So during the tochacha, during the rebuke, do not takots, don't stop. That's one explanation for why we don't stop during the tochacha. Reish Lakish says, "L'fishein omer bracha ala paranos," because you can't say a blessing over something tragic, paranos, destruction. So if you would stop in the middle, then first of all you would say the blessing for after, and it would be coming on the heels of whatever you just read, and the next person who comes up would say a bracha on getting his aliyah, and then he would go right into curses. So we don't do that, and rather what we do is we would make sure to have at least one, or maybe more psukim before the whole tochacha and after the whole tochacha, so that the brachos are separated from the paranos, from the destruction. Yes, actually the Gemara says that. The Gemara says, "Ela hechi avid," so what should you do? Tana, it was Tara and Brisa, Kishu Maskil B'Pasuk Shalifneim. When you start, you should start from the verse before, which is not curses, Ukishu Masayim B'Pasuk Shalachrein. And when you finish, you should read one more verse afterwards, so that the bracha that's before, it will first have a pasuk that's not a curse, then you go into the curses, and at the end, you will read one more verse that's not curses, and then you'll read the bracha afterwards, so that the bracha is not coming right on the heels of the curse. Now, Amar Abaye says, Lo shano el b'kol shebetaras kanim. This rule that you can't take a break, you can't interrupt for a new aliyah in the middle of the tochacha, is only for the curses that are in Taras Kanim, which is Vayikra, which is Parshas Bechukosai. Aval kol Mishnah Torah, but the second tochacha, which is in Parshas Kisavo, in Sefer Devarim, in Mishnah Torah, so posik. There, he says, Abai, you're allowed to interrupt in the middle for a new aliyah. In other words, the concerns that we just mentioned wouldn't be relevant. My taimo, what's the reason that they wouldn't be relevant for the second tochacha? Because halal b'lashon rabim amurus u'moshe b'yagvura amran. Because the first ones, the ones in Bichukosai, they're first of all said in plural, which means they're more severe. And also, Moshe said the words directly from Hashem, was Hashem's exact words. But the ones in Mishnah Torah are, sorry, it's not just that it was Hashem's exact words, it's said from Hashem's vantage point. I will destroy you, I will do this, I will do that. But the ones in Mishnah Torah, the ones in Sefer Devarim, in Parshas Kisavo, they're said regarding individuals, first of all. This will happen to an individual, which is less severe. And Moshe said them on his own, with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration, but they're said from his perspective. Hashem will do this, Hashem will do that. They're not, I will do this from Hashem's perspective. So, in general, they are viewed as a little bit, even though there are more there, but they're toned down, the severity, because it's not in plural, it's singular to individuals, and it's not from Hashem's vantage point, it's from Moshe's vantage point, so that's a little toned down, and therefore, we're not as concerned either, if we go with the reason that you don't interrupt because you can't interrupt in the middle of Hashem's rebuke, we're not as concerned for the less severe rebuke, or, according to Reish Lakish's reason, you can't make a bracha on Puranos, but that's serious Puranos, serious destruction, that which is described in Bechukosai, which is in the plural, and it's Hashem speaking, that's where you could not have a bracha before or after, but in in Sefer Devarim, in Parshas Kisavo, where it's Moshe's perspective, and it's speaking to individuals, we're less concerned that to have a bracha before or after. Levi Barbuti Havakari become a Gamgim Kamed Rav Huna. Levi Barbuti was leaning, he was reading from the Torah, and he was kind of stammering through, and he was in front of Rav Huna, Be'aruri, he was stammering through the curses, and this was the curses in Devarim, the second ones, the ones that we said you're allowed to interrupt in. So, he was having trouble getting through them. Rashi says he was reading them very fast to try to get through it, but it was Bekoshi, it was hard for him. So Amar Lo, so Rav Huna said to him, Akin Afshach, if you want, then it's fine. In other words, if you want to stop, he meant, then you could. You're allowed to break, and somebody else could, you could end the aliyah, and somebody else could take over. Because Lo Shano El Kol Shebetaras Kanim. Because the only ones who are not allowed to interrupting are the kolalos, the curses in Taras Kanim, in Vayikra, in Bechukosai. Aval Shebimishna Torah, but the ones in Devarim and Kisavo, Posik, you're allowed to interrupt, like we just said. Tanya, we learned in a brayso. Reb Shimon Elazar Omer. Reb Shimon Elazar says, Ezra tiking lang leIsrael sheyukarin kolalos shebetaras kanim kodem atzeres. Ezra, the great leader of the Jewish people, when they came back to the land of Israel after at the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash, he is the one who established that you should make sure to read the kolalos, the curses of Taras Kanim, of Vayikra, of Bechukosai, Kodem Atzeres. Those should be read before Shavuos. V'shav Mishnah Torah Kodem Rosh Hashanah. And the ones in Mishnah Torah and Devarim, you should make sure to read them before Rosh Hashanah. So Parshas Ki Savo should be before Rosh Hashanah. My taima, what's the reason? Amar Abaye, V'temer Rish Lakish. Abaye said, some say it was Rish Lakish who said, K'dei shetichla Hashana v'klal, because we want the year and its curses to end. We don't want to save curses for the new year. We want them to go out in the old year. So we want to make sure to say them, the curses, before Rosh Hashanah. So Bishlam Mishnah Torah Ikka Kadesh Hashana v'Kol. It says, I understand that you have to make sure to read the ones in Devarim, the ones in Kisava before Rosh Hashanah, which is when they fall out around, because that's the new year. So you want the year to end and the new year to begin with that the curses are already done. Elish B'taras Kanim, but I don't understand the one where it said that you should read the ones in Vayikra before Shavuos. Atu Atzeres Rosh Hashanah is Shavuos Rosh Hashanah, a new year. What does that mean? You should read them before Shavuos so that the year ends with the curses and you don't have curses in the new year. Says the Gemara in, yes, Shavuos is a Rosh Hashanah. Atzeres Nami Rosh Hashanah, yes, Shavuos is a Rosh Hashanah. Titnan, because the Mishnah says in Maseches Rosh Hashanah, Uve Atzeres Aperes Ha'ilon, that on Shavuos we are judged for the fruit of the tree for the year. And therefore, there's a judgment on Shavuos, which makes it the beginning of a year. We're being judged for the coming year in terms of in that aspect of things, for how our fruit is going to grow on our trees. So it is a new year in one respect, and therefore there too we want to make sure that the klolos, the curses, are finished before the new year. Now, once we brought one brisa about Rabbi Shimon Elazar, we bring another one. I think that's the only connection. Tanya, we're learning a brisa. Rabbi Shimon Elazar Omer. Rabbi Shimon Elazar says, Im yomer lecha zekenim sisur. If the elders tell you, tear it down, destroy it. V'yuladim bina. And the young people say, no, build. Sisur v'altiv. Now listen to the older people, the experienced people, and destroy, do not build. Why? Because the destruction of elders is really building. Meaning when they say to tear something down with their wisdom, they're saying this needs to be started over. That's building. And binyan na'arim stira, the building of young ones, is destruction. If they say no, build, seemingly against the word of the elders, then that's going to lead to destruction. B'siman l'davar, the sign, the way to remember this, and the example of this is Rechavam ben Shlomo. Rechavam, the son of Shlomo. So over there in Sefer Melachim, after Shlomo dies, Rechavam becomes king, and there's only one. There has not yet been a split in the Jewish people, and he's getting different advice from the elders and from the young people. And the young people basically tell him, tax the people hard, you deserve it, you need the money for important things, and he taxes the people hard. The elders say, don't, you gotta go easy on them, and he taxes the people hard, and they get very upset, and it's partially one of the things that led to the split. And Yeravam, not Rechavam, Yeravam then breaks away from Rechavam and starts the northern kingdom of Yisrael. So the young people were saying, build, take their money and build, and that was destruction in the end. Tana Rabbanan, 5 lines from the bottom, the rabbis taught, Makom shemafsikim v'Shabbos, Shachris, Sham karin b'mincha. The place where we stop the laning on Shabbos morning, that's where we pick up at mincha. So we finish the parsha in the morning, we pick up from the beginning of the next parsha at mincha, Shabbos afternoon. B'mincha, and where we end at mincha, Sham karin b'sheni. That's where we pick up on Monday, from where we end. B'sheni, and where we end on Monday, Sham karin b'chamishi. That's where we pick up on Thursday. And b'chamishi, and on Thursday, Sham karin, where we end on Thursday, Sham karin l'Shabbos haba. That's where we start from the upcoming Shabbos. Divrei Rabbi Meir, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. And if we did that, actually, the laning on Shabbos will be much shorter because we'd have already done 3 aliyahs, one at Mincha of Shabbos, one on Monday, and one on Thursday. But we don't do that. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, we go like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Makom shem afsikim b'Shabbos Shachris, the place where we stop at Shachris on Shabbos, the end of the parsha, Shabbos morning, Shamkar Mincha, that is indeed where we start from at Mincha time, but we also Uva Sheni, Uva Chamishi, Uva Shabbos Abba. That's also where we start from on Monday and on Thursday and the next Shabbos. So we end up reading the beginning of each parsha 4 times because we pick up from the same spot each time where we left off the previous week. Rabbi Zera said, Halacha, what is the halacha? Just like we just said, that the place where you stop on Shabbos morning, that's where you pick up from both at, or not both, but all at Mincha, on Monday, Thursday, and on the next Shabbos, you pick up from the beginning of the parsha. Now ask the Gemara, why did he have to go through and describe the halacha that he paskin like, the lema halacha Rabbi Yehuda? Let him just say, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. And we just read what Rabbi Yehuda said, so why does he have to repeat the words? So the Gemara answers, top of the next page, Mishum de'afchi lahu. Because some flip Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir in terms of what their opinions were. So if you say that halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, then, well, which version of Rabbi Yehuda? That wouldn't be very helpful, because there's different traditions as to which side Rabbi Yehuda took and which side Rabbi Meir took. And therefore, when Rabbi Zera paskins, when he rules on the halacha, he doesn't just say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, because there's different versions of Rabbi Yehuda. Rather, he says the halacha is like so, that on that we begin the laning at Mincha Shabbos, Monday morning, Thursday morning, and the next Shabbos from the beginning of the parsha, from where we left off at the end of the previous parsha. Thank you for listening. Next week we will have our final amud of Maseches Megillah.